Howdy do fam, I'm your man, Superman! And today, we're gonna have another video, and this time it's a reaction to Warren Smith of the Secret Scholar Society. He's kind of like, I guess you could say an up-and-coming YouTuber kind of guy. Maybe you've heard of him. He recently had a video about the Joe Rogan podcast with Matt Walsh. When I saw this on my feed, I thought, you know what? That's an interesting topic. Let me get into it with my channel. So, as you can see, the title is, Did Joe Rogan Win the Debate with Matt Walsh? I guess they had a debate about gay marriage. So I just want to watch a little bit of the video and then show you guys the comments that I had in response to this. I posted them here at the bottom. So anyway, we're going to watch a few of the clips that kind of struck out to me. Overall, the video is short enough to where you can just watch it and you kind of get it. But I don't know. The way it starts off is pretty interesting. Let's go. I'm talking too much.
This is the most shaken I've ever seen Matt Walsh.
The most
codifies
shaken.
and protects and gives a name to a thing that actually exists, which are man, woman couples creating.
Listen to his voice
Creating
shake a little bit. He's
children?
almost visibly shaking, but if you listen carefully, you can. I don't think he was expecting this.
Just we're not gonna have any
Okay.
kids at all.
But why is there something wrong with that of someone's personal choice?
Well-
Why is it wrong?
Joe Rogan's expression in contrast to him is so funny. He's sitting there like, "I got you."
So this is the part that I kind of find, I don't know, just a little weird. Warren Smith is usually like a very logical thinker, so I know that he's trying to establish a YouTube channel where he has that outlet. He had like a controversy with, or basically a controversy around, he was a teacher and he allowed his children to think too much for themselves, and unfortunately he got fired. So I definitely got mad respect for this guy, but at the same time, he doesn't always present his opinion. He's trying to understand the different opinions and kind of come to a conclusion on his own based on that kind of stuff. So when you watch his stuff, that's kind of what it is. And it's like a journey that you can go on with him. And I think that's very helpful. It's the same kind of approach I imagine he probably took in the classroom with his students. And I think, to be honest, overall, that's the right approach. But anyway, I want to get into what were they even talking about? Because the way it was clipped, it's not very clear. They're obviously talking about marriage, the meaning and definition of marriage, and does gay marriage apply? And so it seems that like Joe Rogan's position is, if two people just really love each other, why is that a problem if they want to call it marriage? And you could see that Matt Walsh basically tries, well, based on these clips, it just looks like he was about to say something about procreation. That's kind of why I mentioned it in the beginning. He talks about procreation, but I think he might not do the best job kind of getting his position out, and maybe he was thrown a little bit off guard, like Warren was pointing out. But let's watch a little bit more to just kind of get an idea of what happened.
You get out of this, that kind of thing. Like,
How is it wrong if they have a fulfilling and wonderful life together?
Nothing wrong with
that
that.
choice.
Like the way that you're presenting it, it's a totally meaningless institution.
No.
They don't need it at all.
So looks like Matt Walsh is trying to say that if you take out procreation, what I'm presuming, if you take out procreation from the idea of marriage, it becomes a meaningless institution. And then it looked like Joe Rogan was about to push back, but here Warren just wants to give his little take on that. So we'll see.
would view as his most resounding defeat at the hands of none other than Joe Rogan.
First of all, they're just on a podcast. He's kind of trumping that up a little bit, making it bigger than it probably should be. Anyway, let's keep watching.
Of all people, who was probably stoned at the time.
No, it's not meaningless. It's because it means something to the people that get married.
It's meaningful to the people who get married. But what does that mean? It seems like what he's implying is that the meaning of marriage is up to those two people to decide for themselves. Meaning there is no real standard about marriage. There's nothing too definite about what marriage means. I want to ask the question, and is that the case? Matt Walsh doesn't think so.
It's just a subjective, symbolic thing. I mean, what?
Yeah.
So he's trying to ask Joe, obviously. So are you just treating marriage as a symbolic and subjective thing?
Kind of what it is.
It's kind of what it is what Joe Rogan says. That's just kind of what it is, symbolic and subjective.
Valuable lesson that I think is one of the best debate techniques. Matt Walsh begins by trying
Debate
to
techniques?
define marriage.
I think of marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
What about people that
So Matt Walsh says that the context, that marriage is the appropriate context for procreation. And then Joe Rogan responds by saying that,
what about people that get married that don't have kids?
what about people who get married but don't have kids? And this is where I'm just going to take over, I guess, the rest of the video. What about the people who don't have kids? Well, it's fine if they don't have kids. You don't have to change the definition of what marriage is just because some people won't or can't have kids. It's not about the small minority of people who are childless or don't want to have children. And that's totally fine. The problem comes when you're trying to shift the meaning of what marriage is. Granted, though, the subjective feelings, the love that people have for one another is definitely a fundamental aspect of marriage. That goes without saying. And that's also why you have Joe Rogan's argument sounding so persuasive and so powerful, because he's not wrong. Love is the point of marriage. But what marriage understands is that when a heterosexual couple has sex, when they express their love physically, the possibility of bearing children is a reality. Like, they can have children. And so what do you do about the children? Well, the answer is you want to have a institution that can protect the children that come out of a sexual union between a man and a woman. And the reason why, well, I made a comment about that. Hopefully my comment will do it justice. Here I wrote, nah, I think we need to take this slow. There is no hole in Matt's argument. He was just shaky defending it. Joe is taking a very real fact of marriage, love between two people, and he's isolating it from what marriage is about. He's reducing it to feelings alone. And Matt is right to push back on that, because same-sex unions are fundamentally distinct from different sex or heterosexual unions because of the possibility of procreation. And just because two heterosexual people can have sex without the intention of childbearing doesn't lessen the fact that the union can still potentially make children. Reducing marriage to a loving commitment based on mutual sexual attraction changes what marriage means for society by dividing sex from procreation. We need to keep procreation as an essential aspect or fundamental to the institution of marriage, so that people are fully aware of the gravity and the responsibility of the consequences of having sex, namely procreation. The institution of marriage is designed to protect a very real thing in human experience, the phenomenon of two people, one from each gender, falling in love, and through sexual intercourse potentially producing a child. The love is real, and the possibility of childbearing is also real. It's those two things together that make marriage what it is, the beginning of a family, and thus the protection of a family, of the family. I'd argue that the reason why there's such a high number of divorces, the reason why I add this part is because the divorce rate was later brought up in this video. Joe Rogan talked about the high divorce rate of marriages and that kind of thing. I don't really know why exactly, but I'd argue that the reason why there's such a high number of divorces is precisely because people are more focused on sexual satisfaction than they are about the families they create. That's why there needs to be pushback against this idea of reducing marriage to merely strong mutual attraction. It simply isn't strong enough a factor to account for the high responsibility, or I should say the high moral responsibility that children place on parents. So Maybe it does seem a little heavy-handed to say that people are more focused on sexual satisfaction than they are on the families they create. But think about it. So while I was scrolling the comments, I was happy to see that a lot of people were kind of in agreement with this sentiment, more or less. And I want to read a few of them just to kind of get a better idea. So we have this gentleman, Man's Revenge. He says, this comment says, marriage is a religious ceremony. So he's tying it back to religion. It should never have been officiated by the state or government. This is actually more of a libertarian stance, it seems to me. Someone's feelings and inclusion shouldn't be factoring ideas to a religious tradition. So he's really sticky hard on marriage being a religious institution, which I can't disagree with. This should be between the church and its members. I'm really disappointed that you discount Matt's point of view. I guess this is addressing to Warren. Warren seems to be discounting Matt's point of view because of the societal twisting of what is a religious ceremony. I made a comment to this gentleman as well, where I said, agree, the definition of marriage was created by religion first. However, it's important to understand that childbearing is a fundamental aspect of marriage. But because of non-Christian influence in our originally Christian culture, procreation is being separated from the definition of marriage, and marriage is being reduced to a union of two people with strong sexual attraction for each other, which is echoing what I said above. But that makes people ignore the very real consequences of sex. It makes them more focused on self-satisfaction and feelings rather than their responsibilities regarding sex. That's the danger in using the same word but changing its meaning. And if you take away nothing else from this video, that's what I want you to focus on, is the danger in using the same word but changing its meaning to fit what you want it to mean. You lose so much when you do that to most words, but especially in marriage. Why is it dangerous? The answer is because they're separating sex from procreation. And by doing so, damage is being done to children and to future generations and to the birth rate of societies. We're showing children that self-satisfaction is more important than loving children, loving people. That danger should be clearly stated in order to show why this is so important. We've become self-absorbed, and it has a very dangerous consequence, or it has very dangerous consequences. Again, I know it sounds pretty heavy-handed, but I really think we got to come to grips with this and realize that it might be the case. So a few people did respond to me, and I want to get their responses in there. So let's see. Hold on. I think I'm a little lost here. All the comments I made. Oh, I'm so dumb. I posted it twice for some reason. I don't know how that happened. How was it that I could post it here and it's literally copied again right here? Anyway, I don't know what happened. So anyway, this gentleman right here, he responded by saying, marriage was not first introduced by religion. That's false. Ancient Greeks married each other and had no relevant religion to tell them so. I just responded, are the ancient Greeks not a religious people? Don't they have a whole pantheon of gods? Anyway, in any event, I'd have to do some research into the history of marriage to learn more. So I think the ancient Greeks were basically a religious society, were they not? But to be fair, I haven't done enough research to be able to defend that point further than that. So we'll see. Anyway, this gentleman right here, he steelmans Walsh's side by saying, I think it's the actual word marriage. I believe Britain had it right with the separate but equal under the law, and it really was, civil partnership, which had all the same legal implications of power. So it seems like they, in the UK, or in Britain, whatever, they made a distinction between marriage and civil partnership. And I'm presuming that homosexual couples could fall under the civil partnership if they wanted to have, like, for instance, the legal benefits of marriage, which is fine. I don't actually care about that. It's just that when you call it marriage, it's not marriage. It's a civil partnership. Because marriage is, well, if you want to say it is related to religious thing, but it's because of the procreation aspect. Really, it's the procreation aspect. And religion is definitely a part of that. I don't know where I would weigh it yet, but if you don't acknowledge the procreation aspect, then you get down into this thing about, or this, this tangent of it's a religious institution, but why is it a religious institution? But why is it a religious institution? It's because of procreation. So anyway, Anyway, we'll go back to this comment. Sorry about all that. Marriages are supposed to be truly the first and second, or maybe the first or second, most important commitment you ever make in life, because the role they played historically, and he puts in parentheses, enforcing monogamy to ensure parental certainty for childbearing. So that's a very, very good point. But yeah, it's the procreation point. So I'm glad he actually tied it back into that. And the state benefits from that. So that's why there would be that legal a recognition of it, and the legal benefits, like tax benefits, for instance, because it makes sense for societies to promote marriage because it increases society. That obviously isn't at all relevant for homosexual partners. Therefore, marriage isn't the same as a heterosexual one. So the main distinction just has to do with procreation. It's not calling into question the love that a homosexual couple might have for each other. I'm not even going to get into that. Just don't call it marriage, because marriage has to do with that aspect of procreation that a civil partnership doesn't. And this is why what Joe Rogan's doing is not good, or not claim. But maybe he'll change his mind. That's the whole point of debates. You figure out what you believe by running those opinions off of other people, and they give you their perspective to help hone and get closer to the truth. All right, so going back to this one, I say that the birth rate being below replacement levels and falling is somewhat reflective of the fact that many things in society are broken, and the institution of marriage is probably among them. I would agree. And changing, expanding, or devaluing the meaning of marriage is likely a contributing factor. I agree 100%, and I think that this single malt gamer dude did a great job of steel manning what ought to have been Matt Walsh's full argument. So he qualifies all this by saying it's not his belief. This is just the steel man, separate but equal under the law. Let religious people have the word marriage. All right, that's fine. Let's see, how long am I doing right here? 21 minutes, all right. Fuck. Anyway, let's go on. This other gentleman right here, he kind of takes the route of, there isn't really a right or wrong here, just different perspectives on what something means. No. I'm pushing back against that. So this guy also agrees. That says, Joe is right if marriage is only about the state and happy feelings. Walsh sees marriage as something completely different. They're not talking about the same thing. That we can agree on. They are not talking about the same thing. I'm not religious at all, but this was obvious to me. You're right up to the point where you are allowing Joe Rogan to still use the word marriage. It's not marriage. It's really important that we don't just reduce it to there really isn't a right or wrong. There is a right or wrong. The definition is right or it's wrong. That's just what it is. How you're using the word, the context using the word matters. It's either right or it's wrong in that context. And so that is something that I ended up pushing back against later on here. I wrote, it's wrong to take a word like marriage, which means one thing, and then to change it in such a way that it leads to an opposite meaning. The whole point of marriage is to have a healthy environment for the consequences of sex, namely children. It's other-focused. But changing the definition of marriage to only mean strong sexual attraction changes it to make it the opposite of what it's about, self-satisfaction, or simply selfishness. So it's not about self-satisfaction. Marriage is not about self-satisfaction. It's not, or basically it's not about selfishness. Okay, so anyway, so I wrote to this guy, Nuchamina. I told him, bad argument. Marriage is about protecting the possibility of having children, not forcing people to have children to uphold the definition of marriage. In other words, the law was created for man's benefit, not man for the law's benefit. So just because people aren't having children doesn't mean the definition of marriage changes. And I wrote to the other guy, Mr. A, I don't know. The consequences of sex, though, include the very real possibility of childbearing, and that is a fact of heterosexual relationships. And that's why the traditional understanding of marriage is so important. We need to be responsible with sex because of the consequences. Otherwise, we risk separating the act of sex from procreation, which wrecks society. So I want to unpack that because I know people will kind of disagree with that. It's basically a fact that in our kind of post-Christian society, post-religious society, we pretty much have separated the act of sex from the fact of procreation. And it makes sex into just this thing that people do. It's their right to feel good. So they're going to, and to feel good with each other and all this kind of stuff. But again, that creates this level of selfishness you end up just treating sex as something that I do just for me. And if you only think about it like that, then you're not thinking about children. It is definitely created with you in mind because it feels good, I guess. But at the same time, there's the real consequence of having children. You can't just do whatever you want and not suffer those consequences. And I'm not saying children don't. Okay, never mind. Moving on. All right. Some people did push back against me. I don't know why all these things are reply. It's so weird. But so Nukima responds by saying, my argument is simply that millions of people are getting married. They're having relationships. They're not having kids, and they're not caring what you think. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I have kids, but I couldn't. But if I couldn't, I'd still be with my wife, and I'd be happy. And I would be happy that we got married. Our oath in sickness and in health was important to us. We said nothing about kids or no kids. So yeah, that's fine if you say nothing about kids, but that doesn't change what marriage was supposed to protect. Your intentions don't change the definition. In fact, the definition in this regard would actually help you remember the moral duty that you have when you're having sex. You know what I mean? Like, it should be a reminder. And that's what I mean by the law being something that helps us. Like, we're not saying that you have to have children in order to uphold the definition of marriage. So anyway, I think I go and I say that. I did not say that the purpose of marriage is to have sex. I said the purpose of marriage is to protect the potential consequences of sex. Procreation, as well as love between two people. Sex without loving commitment and sex without the responsibility of procreation is purely sex for pleasure, which turns it into a self-serving thing. That is opposite to marriage and is why society needs to protect the traditional meaning of marriage. And then to the other guy, Nukima, I wrote, but those things are for the benefit of society. A heterosexual couple who won't or can't have children is not justification for separating sex from procreation or procreation from marriage when we're thinking of the definition of marriage. And so such people can still defend the traditional definition of marriage and uphold it as a standard. They don't need to feel like they have to be okay with changing the definition of marriage in order to feel logically consistent or not hypocritical. I feel like this is something that they try to do. Oh, because there's a small amount of marriages that are childless, you're a hypocrite because you want to say that marriage is for procreation. No, marriage is protecting the fact that you can have children. It's not illogical to say it's for protecting children, and yet I choose not to have sex in it. Nonetheless, it's a marriage. I don't know. Anyway, because of the possibility of procreation, marriage will always be exclusively heterosexual. I don't know why that makes people mad. We're just stating marriage. We're not saying that you can't have a loving homosexual relationship. Go ahead. That's fine. Anyway, I don't want anybody to feel like this is a judgment on your personal decisions. I just want you to know what my opinion is. So thank you so much for putting up with this video. I shouldn't demean myself like that. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. I hope you found something about this video helpful or enlightening. I will see you guys in the next video. My name is Superman. Peace.